there and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. Today, if you are not aware, I'm Anna, and of course I run Lorena's Labyrinth and this YouTube channel here. I'll do as usual, I'll talk to the newbies first. If you're a newbie to the channel, this week we're kind of following on from last week's yarning video where we talked about spirit communication, the etheric telephone, and ease of transition. Now, for your information, I do put chapters in the description to make it easier for you to be able to find the subject matter that interests you. Of course, if you are a returning visitor, I just want to acknowledge you, give you the thumbs up, give you the nod, say thank you very much for being part of my journey. Now, just a reminder, comments apparently they help with the YouTube algorithm, if I can actually speak. So please do feel free to say hello to me, if nothing else. If you've got questions or comments or subjects that interest you, please write them below. I will attempt to address them. This week I have built the content more around, while it's a continuation, it's also a response to some conversations that I've had this week that have reminded me of content that I can share with you, and I do hope that you'll find it interesting. Oh, yes, I almost forgot anyway. I just want to acknowledge the new subscribers at the channel and say thank you very much for subscribing. I hope you'll remain with me. I have noticed it's quite interesting. I don't try and let my ego rule me as far as looking at who the subscribers are and that kind of stuff. But I must say I do check and I see them going up and down and that kind of stuff. And it's nice to see that it's consistent, even though some people come and go. I put it into perspective that some people will unsubscribe because of the amount of content that I put up. Others might unsubscribe because they don't like the content. They realise they're on a different journey to me. That's fine. I'm not unhappy with that. Each to their own. And either way, I'm really hoping that with the new subscribers, what we're doing is we're connecting and creating a space to build a community. So to all the subscribers, new and old, I just want to say thank you very much. So keeping the conversation around ease of transition this week is, because we sort of introduced that last week, I decided to expand on it this week further anyway, simply because I've received an email from somebody that brings it very much to the forefront as a topic. So, Erin, I'm actually going to name drop you here. Of course, I don't expect you to put your hand up and go, yeah, hey, that's me, okay? But I think the fact that you shared with me your experiences of the dream and the passing of a friend is actually something that many people will be able to relate to. And as with the questions that it raised for you and the sensations and feelings, I'm pretty sure other people can relate to it as well. And it just becomes, with respect, a really good opportunity to share how these things happen. Plus, the other thing is too, I'm able to speak with you through this video and give you a few extra thoughts that came to me after I processed and responded to your email. So for the rest of the listeners, what Erin shared with me is that she'd received visitations in a dream state for up to about a week. There were recurring dreams of a friend that she hadn't spoken to recently. And then the next thing she knew, after about a week of visitations, she received information that the person was killed in a workplace accident. But so what was confusing for her was she was actually seeing visits before the person passed. And then after the person passed, she received another vision that was the person visiting her out of body. Of course, we would call this, some people call it death, transition, whatever. But in this particular dream, because the person had left their body behind, they were just recently passed, it was actually quite heavy energy. She says that there was a real heaviness about it, and she actually informed the spirit that it needed to go and catch up with its family and friends and to attend its funeral before it came back to speak to her. Well, good for her. But anyway, just a reminder, this was all in the dream state. And she said that in this dream where the spirit visits her before its funeral, it apparently became exasperated with her. But it was a friend. It still obviously had love. So it obviously respected her wish and it left and didn't come back until after the funeral. Now, she says then she had another dream where the spirit is presented again after the funeral, bearing flowers and asking her a direct question, are you ready now? And she said there was an energetic exchange and that kind of thing, and where she knew that the spirit well, basically, actually, I'll just tell you what was in the video, in the email, was that she woke from this particular dream and she was no longer feeling the grief and sorrow and sadness. She actually felt much lighter and brighter after this particular visit. But what she actually said is that at the end of the dream, the spirit says to her, well, I'm done now, okay? But either way, she said that her grief and loss was relieved. Now, I want to just focus on this for a moment because there's a couple of things that we can unpack in this stream. So firstly, it's not uncommon to have a sense of internal conflict in the way this has panned out, you know. One is seeing the person in recurring dreams before they actually pass away. That leaves the person that's receiving the dream recipient, having this sort of sensation of things like, was I meant to call that person? Could I have made a difference? Was I being warned? All of these kind of things. Could this workplace accident be prevented had I actually bothered to contact the person? Now, I just want to say here, the answer to that in this particular scenario, I would say absolutely not, would not have made a difference whatsoever, okay? And I would encourage Erin to reflect on this, whether or not this sounds accurate to her. The way I interpret this is that it was not a predictive dream. She could not have intervened. And this is because, in my experience, where there is a prediction, you're actually shown the outcome. So she would have received some kind of sign that that person was about to die, which she didn't get, okay? What she got, I believe, was reminders to her and an opportunity for her to actually reconnect with this person before they had their workplace accident on a physical level, okay? It's not essential, but because there was an existing relationship between these two people, her guides probably knew that she would have liked to have made that contact, and probably would have been more peaceful within herself had she phoned the person before they passed. Because if you think about this, right, quite often when a person passes over, the people that are left behind are asking themselves or berating themselves, saying, you know, oh, I should have called them, I hadn't spoken to them for a year or two, and you know, all of these kind of things can create conflict, shall we say. So there was an opportunity for that to pass. Now, in the case of Erin, it's not really that big a deal that she didn't have that physical contact, because Erin actually has, clearly, by the fact that she can see in the dream state, she has got gifts. And I wouldn't even say that they are latent. I would say that she has got gifts. She just hasn't chosen to open up to them fully yet. But at some point in time, she will. And I have no doubt about that. The other thing is, the reason why I believe that it was not a predictive dream is because the dreams that she was having, these recurring ones prior to the passing, they weren't associated with any sense of foreboding or ominous. There was no sense of urgency for her to contact this person. And this is generally the things that I have happen when it's a predictive type dream. And so therefore, what I would conclude, without actually going in and trying to channel and get specific answers here myself, what I would conclude from all of this is that workplace accident was actually part of the person's divine plan. And nothing could have changed it. Okay, if it's in your divine plan, it's in your divine plan. Now, when she talks about the spirit having a heavy energy after it's passed, after the workplace accident, what I would say is this is because the person's spirit was adjusting to no longer having a body. And this is not an uncommon thing as well. They experience the same grief, the human emotional sense of loss themselves. You know, suddenly they find themselves without a body and they've got to find understanding and meaning within their current situation. And I think a sense of humour helps as well, okay? So because Erin has got this connection with this spirit, and when she's told them, which I believe actually is good advice anyway, that they need to go and connect with their family members and go to their funeral before they come back, you know, that's not bad advice for them. But the spirit becoming exasperated, it certainly wasn't offended, but it also adhered to and respected what she said, which is a good reflection of their relationship. The next part of this series of dreams that Erin has is the spirit arriving after the funeral bearing flowers for her or carrying flowers. Now, this is just my interpretation, and at this point in time, Erin, I would be encouraging you to create some space and reflect on this for yourself, because I have feelings, thoughts, views on what's going on here. Okay, so when the spirit has returned with the flowers, I believe it's actually already been to the light by that stage. One, because it asked you for consent to communicate with you. When it says, "Are you ready now?" that's a permission, a request for permission. But that question is actually twofold, and I'll come back to that in a moment. When it comes bearing gifts, it's bearing flowers. So it's showing you love, care, compassion. Okay. There's another thing to this business with the gifts as well, which I'll get into in a moment. Then there is the matter of free will. Okay. This is the part you really need to reflect on. Okay. When the spirit says to you, "Are you ready now?" I actually interpret that as more than just a case of, are you ready for a chat, but also, are you ready to step into your spiritual gifts of mediumship? Okay, because you clearly have the gifts and you can do this if you want to. Now, the reason why I conclude this is because often the guides that we work with, when we first connect with them and we make that first contact, quite often, and I've heard this from many people, that the guides will manifest to them holding a bouquet of flowers or something like that, or it might be a simple rose or whatever. And the other thing is they wear formal dress. That would be something you haven't told me that you could ask yourself. Now, this being the case, what I think might be happening here is if you decide to step into your mediumship skills, this spirit that has passed to the other side that you have an existing heart-based connection with, it sounds to me like this person is ready to step up and be your guide for spirit communication, to work with you should you attempt to develop your spiritual mediumship. And this is not unusual, and I'll explain to you why. It's because when family members and loved ones pass over to the other side and then step up to become guides, it's because your ear is attuned to their voice already. That doesn't mean to say that they take on a primary role of guidance. What that means is that they become the communicator, if you like. They will interact with your number one guides, I call them, to get the direction from them, and they will then communicate this information to you. And then if there's messages, if you're doing mediumship, the guide, when it talks to you, much like I think I've talked to you about this years ago. Remember, there was a lady in Kalgoorlie. Okay, so we go back a long way, Erin. There was a lady in Kalgoorlie who could communicate with her guide simply by sticking a finger in her ear and asking them a question, and then the finger in the ear was so that she couldn't hear anything else going on, and then she would hear the voice of her guide come through. So that's clairaudience, and she was able to discern that voice. This is what I suspect is the case for you. However, that's for you to follow up on. You can reflect on that and do your own internal reflection, if you like. I'm going to leave that one for you now and go on. Before I do, though, I'm going to say the other reason that I interpret that this person might be willing to act as a guide for you is because instead where you've interpreted, "I'm going now," what I feel this guide has, I shouldn't say guide, what this spirit has said to you is, well, okay, clearly you're not ready right now, so that's fine. I'll step back for now. And when you're ready, you just call, okay? That's just my thoughts, okay? But you reflect on it and see if it feels true for you. So the other thing I'm going to refer to here today is when a spirit visit at night time can often be a person seeking closure, shall we say. So they might present so that we can actually get a message to convey to their loved ones that they've left behind, especially if there's been a sudden death. Now, we as mediums and channelers have got to use a certain amount of discretion with this and have a bit of responsibility, a bit of sensitivity, a little bit of maturity. And I'm going to outline a scenario here because this is one of the ones that has stuck with me. Now, the other thing is too, when we're trying to talk about what's divine and what's not, what's fanciful, when we have divine interactions, they kind of are like embedded on our psyche, on our brain. We will never ever forget them, and we can when we start to revisit them or reflect, like I'm talking to you now about this thing, I can actually see the guy in my mind again, and it plays out. So you know what I mean? It's within us. It becomes part of the core of who we are when we have these interactions. Anyway, many years ago, I was working with a guy. It was a mining company. And while I didn't do shift work, the other people did shift work. And this particular guy, I'd only worked with him a couple of times. I think he'd been on holiday and then come back. So, as I recall, I'd only met him once or twice in body. And I absolutely would not say that we were friends in any way, shape, or form. We didn't have the same social circle or anything like that. I had just met him a couple of times. And I was aware also, by the way, that he was married and he had children because, of course, I did the admin. Anyway, he passed very dramatically, okay, and very suddenly. And I learned of it. I was told that there had been an accident. I wasn't told initially who the person was. I was told about the accident before I learned who you may as well say the victim of the accident was. And it was just horrendous. It was very dramatic as far as passings go. So I'll give you the stories that transpired to me. I go down catching up with somebody. They go, "Oh, have you heard about the terrible accident?" "No, what accident are you talking about?" "Oh, there was a guy who finished his night shift and he was driving into Karratha to get his car serviced, and he had a head-on with a truck on the way in." Okay. And, straight away it was like, "Oh my God, those trucks," blame the truck driver as we do. And anyway, then it was like, no, well, see, this is the thing, this is the story. There was no brake marks, there's no skid marks, there's no swerving, there was no slowing down, nothing. So there's speculation that the person has driven directly into the truck, that it was a deliberate action on the part of the car driver. Well, you can imagine that's pretty horrendous for the wife and children to think that perhaps their father and husband deliberately created this accident. Okay, so where I'm going with this is, then I was told the guy's name and I was like, oh my God, but I know him. I met him. I've met him a few times. I've had a couple of conversations, right? And I got compassion overload is where we're going. Now, to put this into perspective, I had veered off my path. I'd stopped doing spiritual work. And I suppose this is at the time I fine-tuned working with angels and the guides, because I didn't even want to do healing. I was actually feeling so low vibration at the time that I was concerned about spreading my energy to other people. So I'd backed away from all of this kind of stuff, okay? But what happened was I then went into... I was getting visits from this guy, is what I'm talking about, in my sleep state. And I was becoming increasingly frustrated myself. His funeral hadn't occurred, but it was like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help him. And finally I said to him, what is it that you want from me? Because by this stage, it was actually blowing my gifts open again as well. I'd had the dreams. I was seeing him in my dreams. It was almost like a haunting, really, if people are into those words. And then I thought, I've got to actually grab this by the horns, because this guy's getting a bit pissy at me. Excuse me using that word. Pithy, I'll say. He was getting a bit pithy with me. So I was like, well, what is it that you want from me? Why are you hanging around me? We didn't even know each other. And what he was able to convey to me was that he felt safe with me. And this is why he was lingering around me. And then the more he hung with me, the more comfortable and I guess the stronger our connection became. And what he did was he actually showed me the accident that occurred, how it had transpired, that he hadn't actually attempted to take his life. He was actually distracted, he was fatigued, he'd finished a night shift, and he was just driving down the road and he was rummaging through his console, he was looking for his cigarettes, and he didn't see the truck at all until the last moment. Now, there's two parts with this. So had I known his wife, I could have actually said to her, look, he didn't suffer. It was extremely quick. He was there one moment, gone the next. No, he didn't try and do an end of life thing. He actually was looking for his cigarettes. He was just tired. He shouldn't have driven that day. Okay, but the point is, I didn't know his wife. Okay, that was a huge problem. It was like, well, thank you very much for sharing this with me and trusting me to share this with me. Now I'm in a dilemma. I don't know how to actually deliver this to your family, because they're clearly in a really big space of grief and loss right now. And I don't think, personally, as a human being, it would be appropriate for me to reach out and try to contact them and deliver this message at this point in time while they're in the throes of grief, especially because I don't know, one, if they were spiritual, and I didn't think that they were into any of this stuff. And it was like, how would it be received? I had a feeling the lady would react really badly had I approached her at the time. Now, The beauty of this is that we managed to resolve this where I committed to him that I would try and convey a message to her. However, he would need to respect that I needed to approach this from a space of sensitivity, and that if I was unable to get the message to her directly, that I would try and get it to her indirectly, okay, which I did, to be honest. It was like tell a few strategic people because I didn't know a phone number, I didn't know how to contact her. And basically that was acceptable for him. And also I was able to explain to him during this process about going to the light, through the light, and the etheric telephone, and that a physical death was not an ending but rather a rebirth. So suffice to say that it was once we reached this space that our interaction concluded. Now, sometimes it is appropriate when we get messages in our dream state to actually share these along, and this includes predictions, right? But as always, there is free will, and there also, this is about responsibility too. So I'm going to share a story with you where, sometimes we do get messages because not all predictions of death and doom and gloom are in concrete. Sometimes it's like this may be a risk, but you've got a choice here. Okay, so anyway, long story short, I'll just get into this. I had met a person, formed a new friendship with a person, and right from the get-go, I was wide open at the time. I had, oh my goodness me, looking from a hindsight perspective, I had very, very poor boundaries. You know what I mean? I just didn't put boundaries in place. And so I was receiving messages left, right, and centre. Anyway, I'd met this person, and very quickly I was actually channeling messages to the person that left them with no doubt that I actually had gifts. At the same time, it completely freaked the person out, okay, because it was not part of their world before they knew me. And this person, I learned later, didn't actually have anybody out of their friends that would have put their hand up to say that they were into spiritual or energy or anything like that. So anyway, where I'm going with this is, despite the fact I was able to give this person messages of what I'd seen in the dream state, including his deceased father, I had another dream, and the difference with this particular dream, it was a different one for me. It was the first time I had anything like this happen. I woke and there was a name in my head, and it was a name, let's just say Cheryl, okay? We'll use the name Cheryl. I woke up and it was like Cheryl. That's not a name, by the way. But this name was on my head, and I thought, but I don't know any Cheryls. Why is this name? And I was seeing that there was something going on for this woman, and it was like, you've got to tell her she needs to go to the hospital. She needs to get a scan done. And my automatic thoughts were, as you do when you're a bit fear-based, was to run to the fact that, oh my God, she's got cancer. She needs to go to the hospital because there's hope for her. She'll be able to get chemotherapy and she'll be fine. That's what I immediately thought, okay, as you do. But either way, it was, the more I sort of reflected on this, it was like somebody, is it my daughter's, there's somebody in my peripherals by the name of Cheryl who is going to have some kind of health issue. Anyway, long story short, I phoned up my kids and I was like, do you have a friend called Cheryl? No. This new person in my life, I said, do you have a friend called Cheryl? And they said, yes, they do. I said, does this person have health issues? And they said, well, they have in the past. And I said, well, this person needs to go back to the doctor. You've got to get a message to them. It's got to happen. Actually, I had a feeling the person was very close to dying in the next 6 weeks at the time I had the dream. I said, you've got to tell this person they must get to the doctors. They've got to have a scan. It's not fatal. It was like the whole energy of this dream state was an early intervention would be in order, but otherwise it could become life-threatening. So bottom story is, this person assured me that they would pass the message along. Okay. Some months later, I meet this person. Oh, I didn't actually meet her. I met her husband. And it was a social situation, and we were having a couple of drinks, and I turned around and I said, look, I hope I didn't alarm you when I gave that message to you through this person about your wife's ovarian cyst blurt, okay? And the guys looked at me and said, what are you talking about? And I said, because I've had a couple of drinks, it's a social setting, I told you, or he knew whatever, dropped him right in it. The point is, he actually didn't pass the message along. The husband was furious because it had ended up being an ovarian cyst that actually ruptured, and the poor man had been to hell and back that night, not knowing if his wife was going to survive. Now, I don't know. This becomes one of these scenarios that, had I not had the dream, would this woman have passed away? I don't know, because you see, what happens is when my hands get tied in the way they were with this particular guy not passing the message along, I didn't know if he was going to pass along. But my attitude is, when there are messages that I'm not comfortable with, that I will direct healing to them. Okay, so I did direct healing to this lady for whatever she needed for her highest good and the best possible outcome, stuff like that. So who am I to say that it worked or it didn't work? The fact of the matter is, the lady survived, and that's all that's important as far as I'm concerned. She lived to do whatever else was left on her divine plan. So I've given a scenario here about spirit communication, and of course one of them I refer to with the predictive one, okay? So there becomes a responsibility on how we deliver predictions to people for these. I think the reason we're called mediums is because we are in the middle. We're the person in the middle that is the recipient of information to share with others. Now, when it comes to fear-based messages, because clearly a health message is potentially going to create fear in a person, especially along the lines of the messages I received in regard to the lady with the erupting ovarian cyst. Now, if that was not delivered the right way, that could actually create fear. So it's probably a good thing that the guy didn't pass the message along anyway, I guess, from a position of hindsight. He may have instilled real fear of death into the people where it was obviously not necessary. But the other thing is that there is a responsibility, not only in how we deliver our messages, but whether or not we should deliver them, because sometimes we can get messages and it's really not always appropriate to give that information. I'm trying to think how to explain this. Okay, and I'm addressing this because I'm seeing it online that there is a lot of people out there calling themselves tarot readers and psychics and giving people predictions. Okay, now there is going to be karmic responsibility for people who are fraudulent. If you're giving false messages and false hope to people, and you think that's okay because you're earning a buck, and that there's no harm in being a fraud, you're very much mistaken. There will be karma, okay? But the other thing is, you might actually be a legitimate psychic and responding to questions with very harmful consequences. I'd like to think not, okay? But I'm going to give you an example of something that happened to me more recently. In the course of a conversation, this was not at a time that I'm open for doing readings. As people are aware, if you've been watching the channel, I haven't been giving readings for a while because I actually haven't felt that I'm in the right place to be giving them. And I feel more focused on using whatever time and energy that I've got available to actually putting together the content, my understanding, my information, and sharing it with other people so that they can use my information to build their own connection and not be dependent on other people. But anyway, I had a conversation with an Indian guy, and he thinks he's being funny when he turns around and says to me in the course of a conversation, oh, do you see me and my wife having children, right? Now, in the first instance, when I am doing any form of energy work, I actually center myself first. I create a state of self before I ask the questions and get the answers. Now, the rest of the time, I'm just being me. I'm just, could be in a rush. I might be having a good day. I might be having a bad day. I might be blunt. I might be tactless because, these are all part of who and what I am. But anyway, in the course of this conversation, this guy thinks he's funny to turn around and ask me, do you see me and my wife having children? And I turned around very quickly as a blurt and said back to him, do you really want to know the answer to that? I also clarified, I said, in the first instance, mate, I'm not open to doing readings right now, but if I was and you decide to come back and ask me that question, you need to be prepared for the fact that I might turn around and say no when I open up. And I said, and I'm not saying no right now because I'm not open to giving a message, but you need to ask yourself how you would feel and what you would do if the answer is you will not be able to have biological children. And then I asked him, I said, are you trying to conceive? This is, I suppose, me following my own inner guidance. Are you and your wife actively trying to conceive? And he said, yes, but they've been very unsuccessful. So anyway, I said, I don't know. If I get time, I might ask the guides and I'll come back to you. Well, actually, I never did, to be honest. I sort of thought about it, but I felt incredibly uncomfortable actually even asking the question. And the reason why I say this is actually because of why I've got the map up here of India. This is not to say that I'm aware of it, and if I'm offending any people from India here, I do apologise in advance. We have to look at cultural perspectives. In some of these cultures, if there is a problem around conception, what's going to happen? Does this mean that whether it is, because if there's a problem with conception, it might not be with the woman, it might be the guy's problem. But in some of these countries, it could be a case of, well, if I can't have biological children with her, then that must mean that we need to divorce. Best case scenario could be we divorce. Well, actually, that's not the best case. They stay together and they don't have biological children would be the best case, that they love each other so much they don't want to separate. But if they are together because it's an arranged marriage or something like that, and they're not able to have children, the woman may actually become abandoned. That would be the best case scenario, because sometimes it might result in another not so bad one, I guess, is if they get a second wife, if that's the culture, that they love their wife, but they know they've got to have children apparently to meet family obligations. That might be a good solution. But in the worst case scenario, it can lead to fatality. And I don't know if that happens in India, where women are disposed of because they are believed not to be able to conceive. But I know in India, and this is why I put the map up, is they do have a problem with what they call bride burning over there. It's usually money related, but I did see that there are still reports up. As I did this video today, I went and did a Google, and I did see that there was reports of it still happening in India in 2023. So this is why I say, in the first instance, establish, is the person open to hearing what they don't want to hear? And the second thing is, what might be the consequences of you telling the truth? And let's say that I was right and a bride ended up, or a woman ended up being got rid of, for want of a better word, because she is believed to not be able to conceive. Surely I must carry some kind of karmic responsibility for that unhappy ending, So there's got to be responsibility, not only about how we deliver our gifts, when we deliver them, where we're delivering them, to what people, and what capacity those people have to process and understand the nature of the messages that we deliver, especially when we might be I speak English, so the person I'm delivering a message to, if English is not their first language, they may not understand or get the fullness of the message I'm giving anyway. So just a thought to take into consideration if you're actually doing readings, and especially if you're a fraud, please give thought to what you're doing. So this video is getting really long once again, and this is because I'm putting the emphasis on certain content today. But in regard to the angel content that's going up, yes, that stuff's been loaded. I'm still working on the final video, the Guardian Angel one. That one may or may not go up. Let me think about that. I'll aim for Monday, okay, because I'm almost completed. I've started doing the recording and I stopped doing the recordings because I wanted to finish this video off. So anyway, angel content is coming along fine. So last week, the blessings and messages of the Angel of Hope were loaded. You can find that video on the Angel playlist if you want to go back through it. This is obviously the Angel Phanuel, and he's associated with the yellow chakra. Just a little bit of insight there. Anyway, that one's published, available. Go and check it out if you're interested. So next week, what will be published is Mihr, the Angel of Relationships. Now, when we talk about the Angel of Relationships, just a little bit of a tidbit up front here, we're talking not about angelic, angelic or not. We're not talking about partnerships, divine partnerships. That's a whole different video. What we're talking about when we're speaking about relationships is the relationships that we have with other people. And this is kind of group stuff, so it could be your soul pack, your soul tribe, your family pack, your friends, your workplaces, all of this kind of stuff. There are relationships all across life. And so Mihr gives us some messages and information for us to reflect upon, and also some strategy, of course, to build healthy groups around us. Just food for thought. Okay. Anyway, that one's due to be published next week. So just a reminder, all the colour videos are actually already loaded. They're on the playlist. They're just being published each week. But I do welcome you to make your comments, add any thoughts or whatever, and we can then talk about it on the yarning video. Now, just a reminder too, if you put up a comment on the wall underneath the video, I will definitely respond to it, and I will let you know when I'm going to respond to it in a yarning video, and I might actually respond to it directly on the wall as well. But remember, you are important. Your thoughts, your experiences are valuable for all of us. So speaking of the colour playlist, what you will have seen this week go up is the colour silver, which is a colour that I associate with the divine feminine, with intuition and that kind of thing. But you can see more by watching that particular video. Grey was also loaded last week. It's public. You'll be able to find that on the playlist. Now, I also did speak about grey and my experiences of the use of the colour, especially when it comes to aura scanning, in last week's yarning video. And if you're interested in that, of course, I've got chapters. You can go straight to that video, the yarning video of last week, and just click on the chapter that brings you through to the grey slide, and you can listen to that if that's something that you're interested in. So as far as the colours go that are due to be published this week, the colour videos on the playlist, we're going from one extreme to the other. We're talking about the messages of the rainbow colour, and before I go into that, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the fact that from a spiritual perspective, with respect to those people with the gender stuff, and because it's changed a lot, I'm just going to call it the alphabet, because originally it was LGB or whatever, and then it's now got all these other letters that are added to the end of it, and I've seen it change over the last 10 years, and so I'm not current with what it's actually referred to. But from my perspective of the spiritual and cultural background and meaning to the rainbow, when we refer to the rainbow, it's got nothing to do with gender. It is all to do with energy. And in fact, from the Irish cultural perspective, when we talk about connecting with the elemental realms, fairies and that kind of stuff, it's always been referred to crossing the rainbow bridge. Okay, and similarly, this is the same process for connecting with angels. Now, about crossing this rainbow bridge or drawing upon the rainbow colours, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with politics or anything like that. It's all about energy, colour, light, vibration. But anyway, so this week coming up, I think it's on the Tuesday, you're going to be able to see the colour messages of rainbow, which is very potent and beautiful. As I said, it's very closely aligned with celestial, shall we say. So when I say next week is all about one extreme to the other, of course, when we're talking about angelic energy in the higher realms, we're talking about very high vibration stuff with the celestial, but we've also got the colour brown coming up. Now, when we talk about brown, we're actually talking about a very earthy colour. Obviously, it's earthy, but we're talking about grounding and anchoring. So I guess while I say that we've got one extreme to the other, what we're talking about actually is a balance here as well. That life generally, ideally, sits somewhere as we walk our path between this celestial, really high level connection and this grounded capacity to bring divine energy to the earth path and to be able to walk it. So anyway, on the colour playlist next week, you will see the rainbow and brown videos published. So, my friends, before I head on out for the day and carry on with my offline tasks or my other tasks that I've got to do, I decided not to put up the slide for the art reels and the quotes this week. And this is because actually I'm not doing any art at the moment. The quotes remain ongoing. But either way, before I kick on, I just want to say, look, thank you once again for being part of my journey. I wish you a blessed day, blessed week. If you find the content of value to you, just a reminder, please do click the like button at least. And if you would like to subscribe to the channel, that would be very much appreciated as well. Please do say hello to me. And in the meantime, for right now, I'm going to say love you, leave you, have a wonderful, glorious, blessed day, blessed week. Take care for now, and bye-bye. See you on the next video. Toorah!